All right. Hey, everybody. I'm here today with Dylan Jovine from Behind the Markets. I'm really excited to talk to Dylan. One of the great guys in the space. Always interesting takes on things. A lot of experience. You and Chris were the only two people in the space who built and exited a pub. Not the only two, but you guys built Tycoon and exited that to Agora. It was one of the first really big trader education pubs, I actually think, if I remember right. And now you run Behind the Markets and have been for a while now, and it's been a great business. And so I'm excited to have you here, Dylan.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you too. I love whenever we get a chance to talk. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So let's just jump in with, it's April of 2023. We've had the last couple of years, one of the best periods in the industry and one of the worst in recent times. Kind of in terms of how you see just the state of the business, state of the industry, like how are you looking at this right now?
Well, I'm quite bullish on Finpub, generally speaking. I think there are great things happening in the world right now. And, I think a lot of investors want an independent take on it. There's seismic changes happening, whether it's with AI, the rise of China, how that affects everything, warfare. The world is entering a new cycle of war. China's trying to flip the international script, just like Germany did in 1914. So that's a very fertile ground geopolitically to talk about. I find it fascinating, really.
Well, that's a great way to jump into this, because just before our call, I asked you how you're doing. You're like, just trying to tell the most interesting stories I can. And for me, one of the things that really stands out right now is how in the last cycle, especially the later half of the last cycle, there was just lots of promos that were really just black box trading system promos. The editorial for a lot of folks was very, very light in the sense that it's just this is going up because everything's going up. And
Sure.
It's been an easier market. But the roots of this business and the thing that always made this business great was not just the alternative view and analysis. It's that combined with the ability to kind of tell stories about what's happening in the world that are specifically relevant to your investments in a way that is interesting and exciting and different and gives the reader a different view on the world. Really, it's kind of like I always thought of it as like a great franchise is interpreting a world view for you and telling you what's happening in the world so that you feel more confident in your investment decisions because you feel like you understand what's going on.
I couldn't agree more. I'll tell you, I remember Bill Bonner once saying that, well, first of all, Agora, the definition of Agora is a marketplace, and I remember him saying this is a marketplace of ideas. And I remember him doing he was either talking to me or talking to a room. I don't remember exactly, but he talked about ideas they want to start with the ideas that start at the fringe, and then hopefully they move to mainstream. And I didn't really understand that at the time. I just was, so wrapped up in myself, I was young, I was stupid. I didn't really understand the import of that, but I've come to understand that at a deeper level, at a gut level in recent years. We want to talk about ideas that are cutting edge. And obviously, speaking, in their case, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, I remember Will Bonner specifically talking to me about that way before Tom Dyson, way before it got popular, years, literally. But those are ideas that are at the fringe and then they get popular. But, I also remember Ben Graham in his book, Security Analysis, he wrote, you could tell the end of a bull market by the quality of companies that are going public, meaning that at the end of the bull market, you have a bunch of good flights taken off the runway. And at the end, the airplanes are really garbage. And it's the same thing in our business, and I'm just as guilty of this as anybody, when there's easy money out there, there's not a premium placed on compelling stories. People are chasing the easy money. That's a blessing sometimes, because you get to, instead of walking up the mountain uphill in the snow, like right now, you get to slide down the mountain, on skis and just glide with the momentum. And that's a different type of fun.
Yeah, but like the thing that I love about like this kind of I think of it as like this classic newsletter model of, very, very rich, almost romantic storytelling. Sometimes there's a history element that's in there.
Oh.
Um, and when I think about the moment in time that we're at right now, to your point about war and everything else, in my lifetime, I can't think of any other time where we've had so many different like seismic shifts happening, right? Because like to your point, like basically the global security order is
Oh yeah.
transforming.
Yeah.
The global economic order is transforming. The global supply chain, that's going to have impacts across everything. The basic capital environment has just fundamentally changed. You have basically what's been the technological order for the last, I don't know, 20 years feels like it's about to completely shift over with AI, and that everything's shifting. And with that, there is just this explosion of ideas and things to talk about. And then I feel like as an industry, a lot of us have, because of how straightforward things have been in the last 5-6 years in particular, and some of the younger folks who come up, they've only known that kind of environment. I feel like a lot of pubs and a lot of promos out there, a lot of copywriters are not grabbing on to some of the most engaging storylines because they're so upset about the FTC stuff saying you can't talk about these income claims. And then over here, we're sitting there and it's like, wait a second, there's an argument to be made for either China rising up militarily very aggressively or having a complete demographic collapse and the PRC just collapsing, and then the impacts of that. And so like there's like these big ideas that have very strong relevance, and it's almost like this is a newsletter writer's market.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I view myself, in that category. I mean, again, I'm fortunate, I'm blessed. I mean, I view this as my job is to I'm working on a package right now. I'm always saying to myself, what's the most interesting story that's not being told right now? And I view it almost like I'm a reporter. And the funny thing is when I find a subject that I find very interesting, I research the hell out of it and I try to write it in a promo. And I'll tell you something, even if it doesn't work, I say to myself, I've learned something from this process, and I feel like I've reported something that needed to be shared. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. This is the nature of the thing. But no matter what, going through the process, I've gained something from it. And hopefully, I always try to write promos that my readers will get something from reading it, buy it or not buy it, but you're going to walk away having learned something you didn't know before. That's like the key thing for me. I'm going to make sure that you can. And as it relates to the FTC, it's funny, I mean, I was there at your conference the first time, it really dawned on me what this really meant a couple of years back. And, I mean, it's basically changed how we market. It's actually, I remember my first interpretation of the FTC rules was, get rid of all my claims. I used to have this attitude that if it's true, you can say it. So if a customer wrote in and said, I made $250,000 on XYZ, you can say that. But I realized when they're talking about net impression, that there's the truth and then there's the higher truth. The higher truth is, and the FTC was right as I see it, the higher truth is that wasn't the average experience. That was an exceptional experience. So when I read that document that I'm pretty sure I got from Gordon Wright from Damon over there, about net impression, this PDF, it really, blew my mind. The odd thing is that it really forced me to start writing copy that was much more story driven, and the most successful promos I've written now have nothing to do with, they don't have a single profit claim. I mean, they have percentage claims in them, but we're even starting to tone that down. So I've looked at the FTC's orders, get rid of all the most egregious shit first. I spent, weeks going through all the copy and rewriting it. Now, I get a better understanding of it every few months. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't realize that you have to adjust this too. And, I'm going through there and but we're a small firm. So, I'm the guy who has to go through there to really make sure it's in compliance. I'm not going to trust anybody with that. But look, I get where they're coming from. It's forced me to raise the game a bit, or at least try,
Yeah. And so you actually write your own copy then. A
Oh
lot
yeah,
of it. Yeah.
100%. I am
100%.
working with a new copywriter, you know, who has a lot of talent, you know, but and I'm really, you know, working with him to really hone his craft, you know, because this kid has a ton of talent, Anton. But you know, we're you know, he's wrote one package that turned into a front end, but it wasn't a successful front end yet. But you know, every time he sits down and writes, it gets a little bit better. But yeah, so far, everything that you see out there, I've written.
That's amazing. That's great. And so how do you see that then? Are you having, so industry wide, I feel like, you know, there's tailwinds, headwinds that we've had, but like the real state of things right now is everyone's having a hard time with their back end promos. And because of that, they can spend less on the front end for acquisition. That means acquisition's drying up. It's already prices are an issue in general.
What do you mean, prices for the products or prices
No,
for the
no,
media?
prices for media right now, like I think the macro trend is going to be to higher prices. I think that we have dips and we're down, and right now we like, but the thing that's strangling people right now isn't the media costs, it's their inability to even reach. We went from a world where we were paying $300 CPAs on the average up front down to $100 CPAs, which because the back end isn't converting, and you can see that in like MarketWise's numbers too, which I'm going to be doing kind of an analysis of that soon. But everyone's having a problem on the back end converting customers to secondary, more expensive products.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a challenge. You know, it's been more of a challenge. You know, you know, you know, it's all about copy. I mean, you know, to the extent that I understand it. You know, if you know, sometimes it's funny. I write copy every day. You know, the first thing I do every single day, as far as I view it, I'm sharpening my sword. Every morning, it's the first thing I do because it reminds me the business that we're in. It reminds me that we have to ring the register. It reminds me that and it keeps my blade sharp. And that's the key. I have to, you know, keep it sharp. So I'm writing an email every day at least. And I'm also seeing what works. And what I have found for myself is speed has been the absolute key for me. Just speed. You know, just speed at changing things, speed of testing different messages, different emails to match different, you know, different promos, just speed and relentlessness and fighting for every click. You know, this is a market where, you know, for us here, you know, I say to the team, we've got to fight for every click. I don't want any click to go to waste. So every click we're going to fight for. You know, when we go through a week where we see back end promos not converting that well, we're going to do double up split tests. We're going to, you know, then the winner is going to get pushed out. We're just going to slow the game down and fight for every click, put a strong defense up there, you know, half court, really grind it down, you know?
Nice. I love that. And do you think that like, what do you think is what do you think are the causes of back ends being such a difficult thing? Because traditionally the front end was the hardest, acquisition was the hardest, but people are finding acquisition things that work. It's just that they can't spend. And so the back end was supposed to be kind of like the easiest part of it. So what do you think's changed that in this particular environment that happens to be the most difficult thing?
Again, to the man with the hammer, everything looks like a nail. So, you know, I mean, to me, I remember once I was talking to Joe Schreifer and, you know, and I wrote a promo for them. It didn't do well. And, you know, he said to me, you know, I said to him, well, the market's down, this is happening, that's happening. And he said to me just flatly, it's, you know, it's copy. We need better copy. We need stronger copy. And that really hit me in the head. I was like, you know, you know, it all starts with the big idea, you know, in my humble opinion. It all starts with an idea that is just really speaks to what people are, you know, really speaks to it, to the fear. And I know in you're talking about change. You mentioned earlier, there's a lot of change happening in this world. That means there's a lot of fear. You know, people are scared, you know, and I think speaking to that, putting a name on it and helping them understand that you have a command of their fear and that you have a solution for their fear is, is very important. Also, I can't take all the credit for this. I mean, obviously, I work with a great team. I work with Cody, Michael, Simi, Charles, Samantha, Victoria, Andy, Mike Babin, Tara. I mean, we have a team that's very, that we really learned how to move together. So we've become one. And everybody's focused on the same thing. And you know what? One is more powerful than five, obviously. And when you become one. So, our team just became one. Our team, grinded it out, and we're all focused on that, return on investment. Does it make sense from ROI perspective? Everything we decide is filtered through the prism of return on investment. Mm-hmm. So we don't make any decision unless we could justify it with ROI. So we're not playing an ego game here. It's not about, what's going to make me feel good, what this person. I don't care if the janitor comes into a meeting and has an idea that gets us the highest ROI. That's the idea we're going with. It doesn't matter. So we're slaves. That's the God we worship at this firm. Return on investment. And, and I have found to get the highest return on investment requires big, compelling ideas. The most outrageous, and, Anton said it best today, shock and awe. We do shock and awe copy because, we're going to say something shocking, and then you're going to dare us to prove it, and we're going to prove it,
Well, that's I love that. I love that so much because I think back to a lot of the great promos in the 90s and the direct mail days and stuff. And you had forecast promos, like Dow 30,000.
Sure.
And you had, with the rise of China, you had those predictions. It was things that were thrown in your face. It was stuff that was not just here's how to make 10,000%.
Oh yeah, no. And that's one thing I got to give Porter Stansberry and Mike Palmer great credit for. Mm-hmm. When I'm looking back at my swipe file, there's a lot of promos about China that those guys had in there, before it became the threat that it is today. But they were early. Those guys were, Porter, he's a guy who has something to say. You know what I mean? I mean, he's a man who has an opinion. And, and that sells. I mean, that he's got something to say. God bless him. I mean, seriously, powerful stuff. Those guys were on this shit 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, I always look back at because I've said it before that in my view, he's probably the most successful individual publisher and newsletter writer out there. And
besides Bill Bonner, sure.
Right. But I mean, in terms of he built a culture inside there that the rest of the other Agora groups and everyone were trying to, in a large part, especially in the early, I'd say early 2000s, mid 2000s, trying to follow.
He's a legend. He's a legend in our industry. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. And, for him, right or wrong, you can agree or disagree with his investment decisions and picks. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who do. But I never get an impression that his promo and copy ideas and his investment ideas, or that his investment ideas are a slave to his promo ideas. Whether that's true or not, they always seem like he's got a very strong opinion about the markets and about investing. Yeah. And he's going to tell the story that sells that. And that's different than the promo idea drives the product.
I agree. And I'm a mix of both. For example, I'm watching all this stuff about this weight loss drug, that's out there right now. And Morgan Stanley wrote a report last year that says this is going to go from 2.4 billion to $54 billion in the next 7 years. And I'm like, wow, this is something worth talking about. This is something worth researching. So I've really been diving into reading all these reports and thinking about how to frame these numbers in a way that makes it look outrageous. I'll tell you what, who was great at that. Who's great at that is Aaron from Banyan Hill. I mean, she talk about, I've looked at some of his old copy. I have such a terrific swipe file. I think that is so important, by the way, a freaking swipe file, a good, deep swipe file, because as time goes on, there are promo ideas that I saw, these swipe files that I looked at 5 years ago, and I'm like, this looks like garbage. I don't get it. Now I'm like, oh, you live through enough cycles. The bigger your swipe file is, the more you're able to survive economic cycles.
100%. I was actually just because I'm prepping for something I'm going to do coming up soon, and I was pulling. I have a direct mail swipe file from the 90s and into the early 2000s, so post tech wreck. And then I was going back and looking at from 2008 to 2012, 13, when there was still like first abject fear, and then kind of a general, like, I'm scared of what's going on, kind of what was working during those periods, and what were the, and it was a lot of resource copy. It's a lot of,
That's
a lot of
right.
stories about that, a
Yeah,
lot of like big market ideas
that's
about
right.
what's coming, a little bit, sometimes doubling down on the fear and saying, yeah,
Sure,
things were bad, it's going to get worse, but this group is going to get rich, kind of
sure.
thing.
Sure. Yeah. And it's funny you say that. I said earlier, there's a lot of fear out there. I think actually a better word is people are unsettled,
Yeah.
and that's, because fear is, COVID or 2009, the market's crashing, the world's coming to an end, blah, blah, blah. Last year there was a lot of fear, but right now I just sense this, everybody waiting for the other shoe to drop. They're unsettled.
Yes.
That their baseline anxiety has gone from 3,000 RPMs to 5,000 or 4,500. You know what I mean? And how do you speak to that? I mean,
Right.
that's a question that I've been thinking of a lot.
Yeah, because I think you're right, because I think it's harder to do that unsettled market, or to sell to that
It's
market, than it
difficult.
is abject fear. At least abject fear, it's like protection, and then there's
Sure.
like, here's how you trade this market, and
Sure.
like people can, respond to that. But that, like, I don't know what's going on. The whole world seems
Something's
vaguely
off.
like it's going to change,
Yeah, yeah,
and I don't
yeah.
know how,
Yeah.
is uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's unsettling for me too. But I guess that's why I like to write about it, because it works out my anxiety. It works out my understanding of these issues. It lets me dive in and research. I mean, every copy project is so interesting because it's a research project. I mean, and I always start with the name, my working title of the copy promo, and then, notes and reference materials. And I start sourcing everything and digging in, and, copy is a 4-week research process and a 2-week writing process if you're doing
Right.
it where,
Yeah.
but, then I start looking at swipe files to see who's written similar type of promo, see what kind of skeleton I could use, or who's thought about this at a high level. And, the one of the things I've learned is, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I mean, at the end of the day, during every Democrat in office, you have a certain type of promo. You have this I remember these anti-Clinton promos, these anti-Obama promos. Now it's the Biden stuff. You also seem to have, I remember recently, I don't know who wrote the promo, Biden Bucks. That's a spinoff of so many earlier promos.
So many. Yeah.
So many, but it works, so, if I'm thinking to myself, how do I get into this business? I'm looking for the counter programming promo, watch Tucker Carlson. I'm sure that's not how I do it, but I mean, if you want to know what your audience is, I know Porter came out with a promo recently, the two men, something Biden, like the guys, the evil guys behind the throne. I haven't had a chance to watch it, to read it yet. It's on my list, but that kind of reporting works pretty well these days.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's like, there's like this very strong emotional element. Like, it's almost one of the, back to your idea before about fringe though, like the investment idea starting as fringe and then moving mainstream. I think one of the issues today is that the storylines are in the mainstream are what we would have thought of as fringe.
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah, there's no doubt about it. But there's always a fringe.
Right.
There's a whole that moves here, and then another thing starts to churn at the end. You know what I mean? To bubble up. You know what I mean? Before it makes it over, before the wave comes over and splashes all over us. I mean, I was talking to Wayne Mulligan recently, and we were talking about journals that I read, for some of my ideas, and so when we wrote that China Taiwan promo, which was popular for us last year, I was reading, I'm getting these ideas from reading Foreign Affairs magazine, The Diplomat, The Economist, all these magazines that are really thinking of international affairs, and, I'm saying to myself, and I read a lot of national security stuff. I'm kind of a wonk about this stuff. I view great power competition as to be utterly fascinating and yet terrifying at the same time, but, just taking the rise of China, I mean, it has an implication on Taiwan, on our semiconductors. It has implications on our military. What's the next gen warfare going to look like? I mean, the Third World War, God forbid. Boy, I pray I'm wrong. that there's a conflict with China, because there's not going to be any real winners there, just survivors, frankly. Different degrees of losing, everybody, even the winner will lose.
Yeah.
I pray to God I'm wrong, but it just seems like this guy's preparing for war. But now also the other angle here that I haven't written yet, but I've been really kicking around is, how does it affect India and Vietnam? What are those countries that, the other countries, as we do this friendshoring stuff, there's a promo there. The other, there's a bunch of promos. The rise of this giant thing, it, has so many angles. It's just a myriad of stuff, but I'm a little burnt on writing about that. So I need to take a break and write a good old fashioned, velvet cord stock teaser, which is what I'm working on right now.
Oh, well, I feel like that's almost a lost art, like the stock story.
I'm just looking forward to it, because I've been writing all these, high mind BS, this high mind stuff about, geopolitics. And now I'm just like, I just want to tell a story about an American company that's on the verge of cornering a massive market, and I've had this one kicking in my head for a while. So I just as for fun. So I'm really, that's what I've been researching all day today.
That's awesome. So how do you go about that? Like searching for ideas, other than like obviously like having a broad interest set that you are reading lots of journals and keeping on top of events. Like where do you go for like, or how do you recognize something that you think this is both a good investment idea and a good story? Because that's like the hardest thing for us.
Yeah,
right?
that's a very hard thing. I read a lot. I mean, I read a lot of financial reports. I'm brokerage accounts at a few places. I get a lot of research. And I try to distill it down. I read a lot of foreign affairs journals. I mean, I read nonstop. I process lots of information every day. And one of the things that gets me is quotes. I mean, I find quotes interesting. I'm a man who thinks I think in quotes. So, I think in several words. So if I see a quote, somebody quoting something like the Nobel Prize Committee saying this is the holy grail of medicine, that automatically, what are they talking about?
Right.
that automatically gets my attention, So, I think of quotes, and, the reason quotes work for me is, this story that I was taught a while ago about writing copy. It's this, writing copy is like selling silverware on the street, basically. It's like, imagine that you're selling knives, okay? And there are two friends actually who haven't seen each other in 10 years, sitting outdoors at a coffee cafe, having a conversation, catching up. Oh my God, I haven't seen you since college. How you been? How you doing? Da 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 da. Oh my God, how are your kids? I got married. Da 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 da. They're having a conversation for the first time in 10 years. What we do is, as copywriters, we walk up and we try to sell them knives.
Right.
Break that conversation, which is crazy hard, And at the end of the day, everybody's having a conversation in their own head. How do I got to pick up the diapers for the wife. Oh my God, my kids are there. I got to take them to practice. Oh, my son, basketball. Oh God, he's got the coaching thing. Oh, my daughter, she wants to get made, blah, blah, blah. We're all having a conversation in our own head every day. So, for me, I'm looking for ideas that slide through, that cut through that clutter and bang, hit them right in the head. And if I could see it in a quote, and I think that's the job of a copywriter, is to that big idea that cuts right through that conversation we're having.
Right.
So if I'm looking for quotes about things from credible sources, that usually I'm able to pull on that string. And usually, I have this big page on Google Docs. So, it's like copy ideas, big ideas. And I just put stuff there. If you're tired and you see a news story, you just copy the link, put it there, look at it. And once a week or once every 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it is, I look at that sheet and I try to dig down a little bit further to see what's going on. But that is important. But again, writing daily emails, I can't emphasize this enough, has been a game changer for me. Again, it keeps me sharp. It forces me to say every day in the fewest words possible, big ideas. It helps me tease out, work out big ideas. And another thing that's changed for me dramatically is just the length of the emails. I mean, for us, we have a rule, no more than 100 words. If you can't say in 100 words, you don't got it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a totally, the email as a channel now competes with social. You know what I mean? So you've got to be very fast, very quick, you know, blah, 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 blah. You know, that's my general rule.
Nice.
You know?
Nice. No, I love that. I love how yeah, I do think like the idea side of the business is like I'm very bullish on. I'm very bullish on the like to what you said earlier about people we're going to need, like you're going to always need interpretation and analysis of financial markets. They are fundamentally complex. There's so many moving parts that nobody's really gathering all of it, and there's so much to talk about because you're at the intersection of like economics, individual businesses, markets,
Power, money.
geopolitics, power, yeah, corruption, like
Yeah, all of it.
it's all there. And so you will always need that information. And how you consume it though is changing. And I think to your point right there of like, you know, you're competing with social, with email, the media channels themselves, like we have a proliferation of media channels. We have a proliferation of ways that you can consume content. And like I think one of the things that's happening, and tell me if you think this is true or not, is like email is our primary sales channel fundamentally, right?
Sure.
You know? But email, and I am not somebody who predicts email goes away. I don't believe that. I do think that it's being surrounded by a lot more alternate channels.
Sure.
And so now it's kind of at the center of a growing like complex or matrix of communication channels. And that adds a lot of complexity to the business because
the attention is divided.
Right.
The universe for attention. I mean, at the end of the day, what's our business? I mean, our business is financial attention. So where are people spending their attention? Where they go? And then how do we value the media at those different places? You know,
Right.
And who are we competing with? I mean, that's at the end of the day what the exercise is all about. But at the end of the day, look, the rules change, the outlets change, but the game is still the same. Get new customers, sell them things.
Right.
That's the business. Get new customers, sell them things. It's that simple.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, for me, you have fancy ideas, organization, all these get new, who in my business is focused on getting new customers and who in my business is focused on selling them stuff. So to the extent that there's more demands for attention that we're competing, email is just, one of several online venues for attention. You know, what is a click worth on email versus what is a click worth in Facebook, or what is a click worth on Google or Criteo or wherever. So, you know, now we've gotten to this point where I've just put one person in charge. I'm in charge of email. I mean, not internal email I am, but, Sam and Victoria now, they're just doing email. So that's the first time we're doing that. I'm moving somebody just to social and I'm moving somebody just to networks. Each of them are going to value the attention at each of those areas. What's challenging is different, at Google, you're dealing with different competitors. So, you always talk about these bigger guys who are able to pay higher, CPAs, so they're bidding up these keywords a lot higher, obviously. So, that makes actually compelling stories even more important. Using that example of two people at a coffee shop, you need to be able to hit somebody in the head to get past that internal conversation with a hammer, really, But as one of your presenters at your last FMS had, if you do some decent keyword searching, what people are searching for, you kind of can get an idea. If you keep it simple. Look, this is a simple business. It's not easy. Right. But it's simple. It's not easy at all, but it is simple. You know what I mean? It's click 1, click 2, times click 2, 3, 4, 5. You could draw your whole entire business in a series of clicks and conversion rates across one big screen. You know what I mean? Off of a blackboard. And you can say, if I spend $1 here based on these percentage conversions down the line, what do I get back over time? It's simple. Very, very simple. And I'm a simple kind of guy, so I like simple businesses, But again, it's not easy. It takes, it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah. And I think that I don't think we could survive if it was more complex. Considering how complex the ideas that you have to navigate are.
Yeah.
Because we do, from a promotional standpoint, I feel like Finpub has the most complex promotional environment relative to other direct response businesses, and it's in internet marketing businesses. And that's why like copywriters who come from other niches that try and like they dominate it over here and say health or business opportunity or whatever, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna come make all this money in Finpub, and you're like, well, you're kind of mediocre at best, not even, because they don't like, they have like, it's almost like that cult of copy, which is like, I have a perfect structure and I tell this story in this format every time. And it's like, well, we're in financial markets that all the mechanisms change every day.
Yeah.
And there's new trends and there's new, and like, it's way more complex of a moving kind of informational target. And so I think that's part of like why so many people are sucking right now, not because just you have writers who didn't have to do it.
Yeah. Well, everything moves in cycles, and we'll get past this one. I mean, this is, there'll be some consolidation. There's already been some consolidation. There'll be a little bit more. People will be forced to cut costs, which has happened. Hopefully click sellers, there's got to be cost cuts so click sellers can adjust their prices.
Exactly.
Media buyers can adjust theirs. That's a market that's quite inefficient in our space, frankly.
Agreed.
It's shockingly inefficient, actually. Somebody could do something about that. If you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of opportunity there. I do think that like one of my working mental models for the last 10 years, and we'll see if it proves true. I don't know this time around.
Sure, it's a theory.
Is that generally speaking, when the way I look at it is late stage bull market, everybody is like ramping up more products, more promos, more spend, the money's going up. Media companies are killing it. Ad costs go up. You have a major correction or recession. Everything stops working. Everybody stops spending. That brings the niche, particularly the niche lead costs down dramatically. And then about a year and a half, 16 months after, you have the biggest acquisition promo that you've seen in forever, like End of America. And because you had enough time for the copy teams to adjust to the new media environment, and they can go out and like, again, the ad costs are down. They can pay the higher CPAs again all of a sudden, and then they just like we have an explosion of acquisition that happens.
Oh, sure. Plus, there's a copywriter right now, working really hard, who wants to prove himself or herself.
Yes.
That is grinding, waking up at 4 a.m. like I did this morning. That is just hyper dying to tell a story.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's going to be somebody like that, and it'll be a big bang. And then everybody will chase that promo, right? So that promo's returns go down. And then there'll be somebody else who, well, everybody's chasing that promo. There'll be some other big bang that happens over here, different direction. Then they'll all spin and, but that's very rare. It takes an incredible amount of hard work. I mean, I'm 50 now. Now I compete, and I do this I compete against myself because I love the game, that I love what we're doing. But when I was younger, it was all out of fear. I mean, basically, I just didn't want to grow up as poor as I was when I was growing up. So for me, it was like, who's doing this? Will Bonner handed me a book, the 50 greatest sales letters, and I was like, it was like the Bible to me at the time. It was like, like people write this, the one Mark Ford edited. And I'm telling you, I'd never met Mark Ford. I never met Bill Bonner. I didn't know this guy's from fucking hole in the wall. But by reading their craft and their comments, I got to know them by their actions, not by their words. And I got to see that, the commonality there was all powerful angles, compelling stories, what they were dissecting. So to me, once I saw that there was a playbook for this, I was like, holy mackerel. And I say this to my young copywriter, the one I'm training, the first time in years that I've actually trained somebody. I'm like, look, find a skeleton that works. You can't copy it because you just don't do that. But the skeleton's important. If you're going to write a single stock promo or a prediction promo or whatever, a secret lead, Find one of those promos that fits that and use the skeleton. You don't have to reinvent anything. These great minds have thought about this. They're giving you the playbook.
I love that because I love when I was really writing copy and I would build out promo structures, and like the first one I was like, oh, the easiest one for someone to understand is a prediction, a forecast, because it's really just prediction, and you have a thesis statement, which is the prediction basically, and then you have 3-4 arguments why, and then you have a matching like ascending order of risk and
Right.
list of ways to play that prediction.
Yeah.
And it's it's a very clean structure, which is very different than like say a stock story, because a stock story I think is the most amorphous in stock teas because it depends on the story, how you open it and how you tell that story. A systems promo, very like a trading system, black box system, very formulaic at this point.
I can't stomach them. And that's personal. You know, it's just my own. You know, I mean, they're the best when they work. They're great because they last forever. You know, but you know, it's very those are incredibly challenging. You know.
Yeah, and at this point, I mean there was a period there where that was like the primary backend promo. I feel like, and that's kind of shifted.
Oh yeah, I mean I remember when I saw you know this secret symbol predicts big profit moves, and I was like, that's a freaking tight promo. I don't know the copywriter who wrote that, but you can tell that was a well written.
The X pattern.
Yeah, the X factor.
That was Jed Canty over at Money Map.
So Jed wrote that. So that again, great promo. I did a terrible knockoff of it years later. You know, I don't do any copies of any promos that are current, but you know, I have a swipe file that goes back decades now. And what I'll do is see something that's old and I'll say, how could I re-say that? Or, you know, what can I do with it? You know what I mean? And that is top of the craft. I mean, just the way he deals with the objections down the page. I mean, just terrific writing. Wow. Hats off. Hats off.
That's the piece of art.
That's a piece of art. Yeah, that's a piece of art. I mean, I love that. I can geek out on it. That's for a system promo. That is one of the best. You know?
Yeah, that's one of those. Maybe one other one that sold as much as that one.
Well, the skim promo. You remember the skim promo? You know, skim $6,000 a month with my secret banking key code. Based on the old how to rob banks legally promo. You know, that one that worked well. You know, again, that skim promo is another classic, another great.
Yeah, no, that's like, and that's where I think like what writers love about the business, and that's at all writers, is that you have like this awesome craft of writing copy and ideas, but then the editorial ideas and making those kind of sexy too. They go like two wings of a bird. And like I think you're in a great spot because like you appreciate the craft of both sides, and you are an analyst at heart. You like the investment ideas are very core. You're not just like, oh, here's a random thing that fits the story. You're tying the two together, looking for great investments that and great opportunities that you can tell a great story about. And that to me is like the essence of newsletter publishing.
I think so too. And I won't recommend something I won't put my own money into. I mean, I'm not trying to hurt any human being. I'm trying to help people, generally speaking. You win some, you lose some, but at least I know I'm trying to help people. I'm trying to do the right thing in my life, you know, just as a human being. I'm not in the business of trying to hurt people, especially not for money. This is not worth it to me. I'd rather be broke than, literally have to con or scam or hurt people for a living. It's just not worth it. Not worth it at all. No.
Where else are you seeing like, so it's harder on the promo side, but are there any other major areas that you think that like are problematic these days besides like copy and promo in the business? Are there?
I mean, I can't speak to other people. I could just tell you what works for us and what's been challenging for us. It seems, for one of the, we've been around since 2018. So, and I've always run a nimble shop, and I've always been fortunate to work with exceptional people. I mean, that's, I've been beyond blessed. And, really people who really understand, kind of, the methodology to what we do. Again, it's an ROI framework. Every decision we run is an ROI decision, which is, common sense, for experienced business people, but not so for inexperienced people. So, I think what's been challenging for us has been click sellers, really, revaluing their clicks. Everybody wants it. And I'm not, marketplace clicks are different, like let's say Google. But when you're talking to somebody who wants to sell their click at $4, right? And your stuff is converting as well as anybody's out there. I found that often they'll say, well, your stuff isn't converting. Well, our stuff converts fine on lists that are decent. So knowing, for us, it's important to know how our stuff converts on quote unquote friendly lists and friends of ours and other publishers before we go out. Because when we go out, the click sellers, they want to defend their employees. They want to sell you clicks at $4 a pop or whatever it is, because, they're trying to take care of their team. You know what I mean? I have a lot of good friends in that business, and they want to keep their prices at $4 so that, for example, I'm using an example, so that they don't have to bring their prices down and readjust them again, because nobody, once you go down to, let's say, 2.5 a click, nobody's going to want to go back up, but so there's not an efficient bidding system there. So what ends up happening is we've had to really just negotiate the real price. There's a list price and then there's a real price, So that was a challenge for us to really get to that. Yeah. The other challenge for us is, scale. We work with some great partners, IMS, MarketBeat, It's Today, FIT. We work with some terrific guys who get us a lot. But, we're bidding, our offers are up against their other great offers. There's only so much they can give you. One month it's 500 customers, one month it's, 400, 300, whatever it is. So it's a very competitive, we're competing against copy, this idea, So, how do you grow beyond that? Is the big question we've asked ourselves recently. There are two ways. One is more copy to the same channels, hey, IMS, Josh Morris, Nitin, those guys, Amy, those are dear friends of mine on a personal level, but one is to push more copy through those channels. And, it works, it doesn't work, but those guys are in business for themselves. They're going to say, hey, you know what? I got an offer at, XYZ firm, and that's what I'm pushing. I'm getting, converting at a better rate. It is what it is. That's the game. The other way is to take some of your existing copy that might be tired with those sources, but bring them out to new sources. Because one thing that we find is that copy that might be tired to our small network of affiliates, whenever we get a new affiliate, it converts like crazy. You're just expanding the universe. So one of the big questions that we've been asking ourselves is, how do we really expand out? And I think one of the things Brett Holmes, doing this deal with him, this co-reg deal has been helpful, in that department, because it gives us another audience, the way we've structured this deal, and, credit to him, but it's given us access to that whole, to Money Map as an organization, which is obviously an organization, talk about another great copywriter, Ward.
Mike.
God.
Oh man, I remember when I was doing some stuff with them, like I got to sit down while we'd be having a meeting, and then he's like, hey, hold on, I have a copywriter, I got to crit something. And then he would come in, read their promo, X a bunch of it out, and then just riff off the cuff an amazing lead.
He's a master.
Yeah,
he's a master. Wasn't he at your thing when he said a couple years ago, he talked about the itchy skin thing, and this is how you sell a promo, and my God, it's just beautiful to see a master like that, tell a story like that. It's just like I was literally awestruck. It's just, gosh, it's very exciting to me.
I loved how he asked the question. He was like, how many people in here is it their job, is copy their job? And if people, copywriters, raise their hand, and he's like, no, like it's all of your jobs. Copy is everybody's job in this business.
Yeah. Obviously I took that to heart. Actually, again, to me, that's what this business is. That speaks to what the business is. And what I have found in my 20 years of doing this is that when things are working well, it's because of good copy. When things are not working well, it's because you don't have good copy. I hate it. I wish it didn't work that way, because it's like the hardest path, You know what I mean? I wish it was something my tech guy could fix. I wish it was something that, the sales guy in the room next door to me, he could fix, but the truth is that the obstacle is the way. I mean, that is the obstacle. It's the obstacle and it's the path.
Right. Yeah.
Period.
I mean, it's the marketing and the deliverable.
Absolutely.
Right?
But your marketing team has nothing without a good story to tell. Because if you don't have, and that's where it's at. If you tell your marketing team, hey, go cut me a deal with It's Today, George is going to say, your guys' shit ain't selling. Hey, get me stuff with MarketBeat. Those guys are going to say, you know what, you're a great guy, but your stuff ain't converting as well as XYZ. Your stuff has to convert. You know what I mean? That's the constant thing that, that's why I'm up at 4 a.m. this morning, thinking like, how do I get more stuff out there? How do I get better stuff out there?
Yeah. And that is because when I think about the intra-industry competition, there's only really 2 areas that it really, and it's for talent recruiting. And it's for what you're talking about, which is conversion in the kind of CPA networks, and right, because 1 or 2 really strong promos squeezes everybody else out because everyone's making so much money. And so that's the point of competition in the industry. Everything else, like, we're so congenial. I'll run your offer, you run my offer, like we'll work, we'll share information, because the only thing that really that we do is we compete with hiring really talented people, because there's a lot of specialized skill sets here, and then conversion. And so that's why most of the competition is for copywriters who can write. Because if you solve this, then you solve this to some degree.
I mean, things get a lot better when you have a good big idea and a solid promo. I mean, my God, when I'm writing a promo and I feel like, it's like a song, it's like a hit. When you hear a song and you're like, oh, that's a hit. Like the first time I heard Nirvana, I remember where I was driving, Come As You Are. I was like, wow, that's a hit. I don't know who sings this, but this is the hit. When you're writing a promo, at some point, the critical mass of it comes to you and you're like, oh my God, this is story to tell. I've got to get this out. And, I've had enough of those experiences and enough where they didn't work to where, I'm at the point where I don't get too excited, but, I do feel like this is a story worth telling. Whether it wins or loses, this is something that has to be said.
That's the thing. Like, I look back on I remember my biggest promo. I was like, I finished it. I was satisfied that I had told it, but I was like, this isn't going to sell. But at the same time, I was like, this was the story. And then there's other ones where I'm like, this story is going to sell, and it didn't sell that great. But it's that moment of like realizing that there is a cohesive story here, that like that's copy. Like, you have this great, like, maybe it's going to work, maybe it's not. But if it doesn't, like, every bad promo you can tell, because you're like, this is just not quite coming together. Right. Or it's like, oh, here's a formulaic thing where like big easy money X followed by Y followed by Z. And then it's just like,
well, the FTC rules aren't letting those, that I don't know that you could do that anymore. People
are still teaching it. I see it out there. People are still teaching it in the copy.
Oh yeah. Well, God bless them. Bless their hearts, as they say down south. Bless your heart. I don't want. It's actually I would be very afraid and concerned to do but this time you'll make $1.7 million in 3 months, instead of 1.6. And that's the way it started to feel at the peak of the last bull market. Oh, this promo, you'll make $1 million in 3 months. No. Here's one. You're going to now make 2.8 million in 3 months, and it just was like this bidding up to absurdity. So the FTC took the head off the beer and said, enough with the absurdity.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. That's how I perceive it.
And that's where like I love, this is like my copy geek coming out, where like I love like kind of like some of the like all the different classic kind of great copywriters have a different personality in their copy, right? Like I learned under Clayton Makepeace, the late Clayton Makepeace, who was a big personality. He's a huge character. His copy had like I actually was, felt bad towards the end of his career here, where the market wasn't like, there's a market that is Clayton's market, and this is it right here. Like this is like, he crushes it in certain times. He crushes it in when there's negative stuff, or there's big stories, where there's political stuff. Like his stuff is amazing. And I always felt bad because I was like, oh, he was grinding it out there for a while, and I was like, man, this is not his like. But because when he's on, like, I remember he had this phenomenal promo called "Shameless Two-Faced SOBs." It was this great big yellow magalog, and what it was it had a picture of Bill Gates and all these other, like,
that's awesome.
And what the hook was essentially, they're telling you to buy their stock while they're selling shares, right?
That's great.
Right, and
that's
it's
great.
Just like,
I wonder
awesome.
That could probably play now, a version of that, because of this, anti-elitism out there. You know what I mean? I mean, my goodness, that's an interesting angle, huh? Yeah. Again, that's, I guess, the Porter two people steering, whispering about basically this feeling, this agreed feeling that there's a secret and there are people that are getting over on you. There's a lot of that, not to touch politics at all, but, there's a lot of that general angst. People feel like they've been talked down to. They feel like they've been not listened to. So if you could, writing a promo like that, that's worthy. That's worth a shot for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that feeling of being like that, like anybody with any type of power is disregarding everybody else.
Sure.
Is very, very prevalent right now. But I do think that copywriters kind of get, there's a thing that every copywriter believes about the world, that they may not realize that they believe about the world, but it comes through in their copy. And a great example of this to me is like Clayton, where like I look at his promos, and all of his promos are either somebody screwing you over. Right.
Oh, you're right. He would do so well in this market. My goodness.
And then there was like, or there's this overwhelming trend that's happening that is so unavoidable that it's either you're going to catch it or you're going to get smashed by it. Right. And that's kind of how, like, having worked with him in person day to day, like for a few years, like that's just who he was. And then I think of like kind of classic copywriters like John Carlton, and like Carlton's, like, all of his copy is like, there's the guys inside who know all the street smart tricks, who are really like cool kids, and either they know how to game this system, and either those tricks or you're going to get played by them. And so it's very much like that inside, like kind of like,
that's so interesting.
Baseball.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Actually, I never thought of it that way. That's really interesting. I wonder, not to get too weird, but, it says something about their childhood, obviously, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's fascinating. I wonder what my copy says about me. Oh my God, he could see right through me.
No, it's fascinating. Like, I remember Clayton, like, he was a huge proponent of credibility, like dripping in everything. But like to know Clayton was to like realize that like he had to be the biggest, smartest, whatever guy in the room. And that is not, and I'm not saying that at all as a knock on him, right? This is like kind of like it's just kind of his personality. It was like, there was a lot of great salesmen, I think there is that sense of like, I need to prove, right?
Oof,
and so
that's an emotionally expensive way to live.
Right. But it's like that he had an innate ability to grab every credibility point out of thin air and frame things. And so that comes through in his copy. And I was like, I can relate to that. Like, I was a big credibility guy too from him. And that's why I worked well under him. And like,
I'll tell you what, as it relates to my copy, we were talking earlier that we have a shock and awe style for our copy. For me, credibility, using the most shocking headline in the world, and then using the Wall Street Journal backs it up, Bloomberg backs it up, just, I want to slap you in the face where you look and say bullshit. And then your eyes come right down and you see that it's not, using credibility to really prove it,
Yeah.
That's my favorite kind of package to write.
Yeah.
Something outrageous headline where you get the person to say, F no, that's not real. That's fun for me.
Yeah. I did my first actual trading copy that I ever wrote was an homage to Clayton, because he had this silence of the stock market lambs, or slaughter the stock market lambs. And so I did my lead magnet was Goldman Sachs's next slaughter of the stock market lambs. And it was after that, it was 2009. So we had the Vampire Squid article.
Right.
We had all the stuff from William Black out there talking about how everything was, and so then we just made the whole promo like all this super credible kind of
that's
stuff.
great. That's
and
great.
So and it was like my favorite. It's not my highest selling thing, but it still remains one of my most favorite things that I ever wrote because just because I think I had like a line, like one of my subheads was something like Goldman Sachs may not be the devil, but he sure is whispering sweet nothings in their ears. Like,
that's
just
great.
like,
it was it's a hard job. Being a writer is a hard and lonely job. And, I mean, it is your computer, one of the great things that I had, one of the worst things I did as a younger copywriter is I would start writing before I finished my research. And my goodness, oh my God. I mean, geez, oh God, what a pain. Now it's like traveling in a forest and going in circles. Didn't I pass this tree? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it is a certain kind of hell. Writing is the last thing a copywriter should do. For me, right now, what I've learned is actually writing is the last thing I do in my copywriting process. Where I just end up killing myself.
I remember when I was a younger copywriter, hearing Gary Bencivenga, who's was phenomenal, say that research was his secret weapon. And then I sat in on a call that Paris Lampropoulos did, and he gave everyone a homework assignment before the next call, and it was basically like, go research this, and then you come back and everyone reads the research. And he was like, no, you should be writing your research like copy. Right? And you read it back to me, so that way you have stuff. And then that research piece of like, I remember switching when I had the copy chief people at one point, and I was getting so frustrated because I was getting stuff back from people that was all like, you're gonna get hit by this, like Manny Pacquiao. It was just this like, and it was like everyone was trying to. So my shorthand for it became, stop trying to say boring things in interesting ways,
right?
And
exactly,
and try and find interesting things to say, in interesting ways.
I mean, that is if you have to say that to someone, that's but it when you're very young in the business, you don't know anything, you don't know what the rules are. It's very difficult. But cliches, I mean, my God, I mean, if I see it, if somebody sends me copy that has a cliche in it, I mean, that's just we don't want to do that. To be clever like a little performer. It took me probably 10 promos before I broke mold. You know what I mean? Before I was actually able to just construct it the way I wanted to.
Right.
I started with a skeleton and I said, Bob, I don't need that. I can do this and just flow it the way I want to flow it. It took me a long time. I mean, some years,
Yeah. I realized that because structure for me was very important. Like that's how I learn the conceptual frameworks. And the thing that I was like, if I can't, I realized that like if I can't create just a logical thesis statement with supporting arguments of why this investment approach or thing is actually like a viable option, then I can't structure the promo. Right? Because it's like, if you don't know what are you actually selling here? You're selling the idea.
Absolutely.
If you can't write out just a simplistic bulleted thesis argument on this, like, you don't have the ability to structure the promo yet.
It's funny you say that. I saw this great promo the other day. I don't know if it's Empire Publishing or whomever, the death of the dollar, one of those. But theirs was good. I mean, right now the Fed is going into this currency, they're going to create this, digital dollar. So they have a deadline. There's a date on the promo, the death of the dollar. I mean, it just has so many of I haven't studied it. I saved the email just to look at it this weekend or whenever I get a chance. But, there's so many. That's a compelling story to me. There are other dollar stories that are very compelling to me. That's what I'm going to pivot to after I'm done with the single stock promo. But there, again, the best advice I was given is find stories that you're interested in. Find stories that you're interested in, that you find interesting, things that you're interested in. Just find those and find the most interesting way of telling them, you know, find somebody, because I assure you, if you're thinking about it, someone told a different version of that story 50 times, and at least 2 of them were great, you know.
Right.
Find somebody who wrote a promo kind of like yours, the idea you have 10 years ago, you know, make sure it's out of use. You don't want to, you know, even use a promo that's being used. Something that's out of use, use the skeleton of that. And, you know, I say this to to copywriters all the time whenever I'm asked, write it line by line. You know, your lines replacing their lines, that'll teach you tempo. You know, that'll teach you tempo. You know what I mean? Use your words. Don't say their stuff in your words. Say your stuff in your words, but line by line. If they have 78 lines in theirs or 1,000 lines, write 1,000 lines, just line by line. So you learn from the masters, the tempo, the pacing. That's a big, actually, one of the big changes that I've seen in copy is finally we've started to write copy like we talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, you know, 10 years ago, copywriting was, you know, a paragraph had 3 or 4 sentences.
Right.
You know, now a paragraph is 1, 2 max. You know what I mean? I mean, that's how I talk. You know, I always felt like, you know, again, I didn't do well in school. So, you know, I always felt like I'm writing like a hick here, you know, like I'm literally just writing sentences. I know my grammar, whatever, you know, I'm just writing it, but this is how I talk to people. You know, writing how I talk has helped me do that. You know, it's helped me write some better copy, I think. It's been my most effective stuff.
Yeah, I remember Clayton on Tempo told me, and I always remember this. He was like, you know, as the promo progresses, every section should get shorter than the previous one because it should speed up.
That's a great tip. Wow.
Yeah, he was a master of all kinds of stuff that like he'd come up with stuff, and I'd bring an old promo of his and I'd ask him about it, and he's like, oh, I totally forgot that I came up with that, because like,
wow,
you know, he would have like, you know how you have like on TV on the news, they're teasing the next thing that's coming up.
Sure.
Well, he would do that on the bottom of Magalogs, where he'd be teasing what's on the next page and started putting
something. Yeah.
It was like, you know, that constant, like,
that's great. Always pulling you in, always pulling you forward gently, just pulling you in. You know, I have never thought of that side of the craft at that level. I don't think. My whole attitude is to slap them first, you know, like, to me, you know, again, in this context of 2 people having a conversation, you know, how do you get someone's attention? You know, I mean, really, in this hyper competitive world for attention, how do you get their attention? You know, it starts with a 8-word headline, you know, that just is crazy. But I have these old little tricks on my, I'm looking at my notes that I have on my computer. Start with 1 true sentence. You know how many times I sat down and I tried to write copy? I'm like, I don't know how to start this. And then I start with 1 true sentence. I learned that from Ernest Hemingway. What's 1 true sentence? You know, sometimes I sit there and I write the dumbest sentence in the world. You know, I am a loser, you know, whatever, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is the greatest idea I've heard of in 3 months. The best idea I've heard of in 3 months. That's a true sentence. Then why? You know, I mean, it starts to unspool it. And of course, the most important, the idea of one. One idea, especially in the lead. I mean, my God, that is where we spend 80% of our copy, because that's where customers spend 80% of their time. The war is won or lost in the lead.
Yeah, that's where I think it was Mark Ford had this really great, it's just a one-liner, but it was basically a great headline is a foregone conclusion, right? And so I think of like, ignore China, lose money, right? Like, you know what the like the essence of that promo is going to end up at. It's a foregone conclusion.
Interesting.
And
I once interviewed him for copy. You know, again, another great influence in how I perceive, one of the great mentors and how I perceive things. You know, just changed how I perceive my craft. I mean, genuinely, I didn't look at it as a craft before. Actually, God, I was too self-absorbed or something. I didn't understand the craft of it. You know, and now I see nothing but the beauty of the craft. You know, it's just awesome. You know, but this is the aging process. You know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that there's so many different great pieces of copy advice and insights from different people and different approaches. It's like we have this really rich culture of copy, and I think that one of the things that we started with on the idea of kind of like great story and romance is essentially like, this resolution of, for a while, and I framed it this way, and this is maybe this is a false frame, but it's there was a kind of this war between like the copying culture of like kind of Porter and like Bill Bonner, like the old school kind of like storytelling, but investment folk, like big investment themes, things like that, versus like the infotainment piece. And it's not really that there's not really a war between those two. It was more that like, I think that we had the ability, because of how easy the market was, that for that infotainment piece to be super light on the investment piece, right? Like super light on that.
It was a party.
Yeah, but now
party. It was 4 a.m. It was a party.
Like really great pieces are both like End of America, right? It's like that's infotainment for sure, but it was meaty.
I think that actually was a genre buster. The things that are great bust form. You know what I mean? That busted form. You know what I mean? It was infotainment, but very education. It married the two. You know what I mean? And that it transcended both forms, basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It created something new. That's what we all go for.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the unicorn.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I love that you're so copy focused. That's like,
I mean, what game are we in here? What game are we playing? I mean, if the game is get new customers and sell them things, I don't, if you have another way to do it, please tell me. I just haven't figured that out yet. I mean, if there's another way to do it, I'm all ears. I just, again, I haven't figured out how to get good customers in mass without compelling copy. You know?
Well, I think that's it, is that like with investing, even in like the best hedge fund managers, the best fund managers, the best investors, like they're telling stories constantly.
Oh, of course.
Because you can't like, and then they have the track record, and that's why everyone's like, oh, I want to go in with this guy. But they get there, like their communication style is always like their storytelling. And I think that's inherent in financial markets, because it's how else are you going to synthesize and organize all this information and be able to understand it?
I agree. Ever since, they say that from ancient Greece, there are 7 different archetypal stories, the hero's journey, things like that. So for me, I mean, ABC News used to do this really well. Now it's commonplace. They used to do the Olympics, where they tell you the backstory of the person. This athlete wants to win because he wants the guy's mother a house. You know what I mean? And it shows you how pictures of him and his mom and all this other stuff. And American Idol did that well. People need to be able to relate to what they're hearing here. That's why I think this book is so important. Great leads.
Yes.
If you don't have it, I advise everybody who doesn't have it to get this book. Great Leads talks about the different types of leads and copy. This talks basically the different types of stories our business tells.
Yeah.
And it's right on my desk for a reason. I mean, I pretty much know every one of them cold. I haven't written everyone, but I understand how to categorize them, and just making sure that I keep it there right now, because, again, I'm thinking about this new package. I'm thinking about how to do this. And it reminds me of what's important, what business we're in. Because, it's easy to forget what business we're in. We're in the business of great ideas, great ideas that nobody else is talking about. Now, that happens both in editorial and copy. You know what I mean? The best is when you marry those two. We were talking about Porter Stansberry, End of America. But, Brian at Investor Place, I mean, I mean, his superpower was he was marrying editorial and copy, way before. I mean,
I love his frame of basically like, you have like, if you want a front end idea, your franchise has to have a trend that you're following that's going to last 2 or 3 or 4 years or 5 years, because otherwise, how are you going to write the next part of the story? If you get a winner, if you get a winner and the trend's gone in 6 months, what was the point?
Oh yeah, he was talking about shit that I didn't even understand at the time. I was like, huh? Yeah, sure, buddy. But I see now in hindsight that this guy had his finger on the pulse, no doubt about it. But finding big, That's what I do for a living now. I try to find the biggest ideas I can, talk about the things nobody else is talking about.
Mhm.
You know, if somebody else is talking about it, I don't want to talk about it. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I did the foolish thing when I first came in. It was the dumbest thing I've done in a long time. It's still comical, actually. I was talking about hypersonic missiles. And I have to end on this, John. I got to go
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
my kid. So I was talking about hypersonic missiles, and this is when 5G was really big. Remember that? You know,
Oh, yeah.
2018, I think. You know, and
Mhm.
you know, and I was talking to somebody, and he's like, you know, 5G is really big right now. And I took this beautiful hypersonic promo that I have, and I changed it to new 5G arrow is going to replace nuclear missiles. I just slapped the word 5G, and I was like, you know, I'm not good. And of course it didn't work because it was a, you know, it was like Frankenstein's monster here, you know. And I said to myself, I promised myself at that moment that I wasn't going to do that again, that I was going to play the game the way I play the game. Win or lose, I'm going to play it the way I play it, which is try to find the most original ideas I can. Or if there's a story that's being told out there, try to say what hasn't been told about this story yet. What's new? What are they missing on this angle? Or what's a unique angle on this? You know, and that's the way I'm going to play the game. Live or die. I'm going to live or die by that rule. Succeed or fail. I'm only going to play the game the way I play the game. You know, and that really took a lot of pressure off me, and just said, all right, just tell stories that are compelling. And you know what? At the very, even if you lose, you learn something really exciting.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. I think that's great. That's great advice in general, to play it the way, and that's like a little bit of maturity that I've had similar realizations about other parts of my business. It's like you're gonna do it the way you're gonna do it, and just do it that way.
And there's comfort in that, isn't there? I mean,
is.
you know that you're going to lose a certain percentage of the whatever, but I don't want to chase the high. I don't want to feel like I'm I'm on cocaine at South Beach at 3 a.m. I don't want to chase the 5G. Oh my God, I don't want. That's just no. I'm going to play the game. I'm going to walk down and, you know, get them all. You know, that's the kind of attitude I'm not running down to screw anything.
That's beautiful. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Bill. And this is an awesome conversation. I love talking to you. So
likewise, you have a wonderful day, huh?
You do the same. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.